Under GDPR, we need to understand clearly about a few roles. The first one is who is a data subject. Data subject is that living natural person in EU whose personal data or the personal data to whom it can be identified with or it is identifiable with. That living natural person is called the data subject. So the GDPR regulation is protecting the rights and freedom of that data subject. So any user who buys a product, subscribes to a service, is a target of any marketing of this company, is interacting with a public organization, all these can be a data subject. The second role is data controller. Data controller is a natural person, legal person, organization, public organization, etc., which is deciding the purpose and means for the collection and processing of this personal data. So the data controller decides the purpose and means of processing of this personal data. Again, it can be an organization who is selling products or services to EU. It could be a public organization who is dealing with the data subjects and their personal data. It could be a social service organization who is dealing with personal information. It could be a marketing firm which analyzes the patterns of behavior of these data subjects. It could be any of these. The third role is data processor. Now, data processor again is a natural person, legal person, or a public organization who does the processing of personal data on behalf of a data controller. That on behalf is a keyword there. So data processor is not the organization which decides the purpose and means of processing of that personal information. It is decided by the data controller. But the data processor works on behalf of the data controller and processes that data. Now this data processor can be an outsourced organization who does this processing on behalf of a customer, which is a data controller. It could be an outsourced provider to a public authority. It could be a technology provider like a SaaS provider or a platform provider whose platform or whose infrastructure this data is being stored and processed in, even though they may not be directly involved in processing of that data. So the key thing is the processor is an organization which is doing the processing of personal data on behalf of the data controller. Now under GDPR, both data controller and data processor need to be compliant to GDPR. GDPR specifies the specific requirements of compliance for data controllers and data processors. Now let's see how do we access and understand the requirements of this regulation called GDPR. The full legal text of GDPR as a regulation is available for free download on the internet. You can download it, go through that, understand the requirements, but it has the full legal text of the regulation. That's one way of understanding that. There are many websites, private websites, which has put these legal text in a more accessible and referenceable format. That's another way you can understand the GDPR. But here, let's look at what is the structure of this GDPR as a regulation. What is contained in it? On a high level, GDPR has two broad sections. The first section is recitals. The second section is the articles. The recitals are not the mandatory requirements for compliance. The articles are. There are 173 recitals in GDPR and 99 articles. These 173 recitals gives you a context, background, the purpose, why specific requirements and compliance needs are incorporated in the regulation, why this regulation is structured in a certain manner, why certain requirements are given in the regulation, how the regulation was evolved, what are the principles in which the regulation were based on, all those kind of details you can understand from the recitals. Like we discussed, the recitals are not the mandatory requirements for compliance, but recitals are a good reference to understand the context and the background of why these articles and requirements came up in GDPR. So many a time, recitals can give us better guidance and inputs in terms of complying to a specific article. So like we said, there are 173 recitals. The second section of GDPR, which is more important from compliance, is called the articles. There are 99 articles as part of GDPR, divided into 11 chapters. All these articles may not be the mandatory compliance requirement for every organization or every party, depending on the role of the organization as a data controller, data processor, or a supervisory authority, or the board. Some of these articles could be of relevance to them and they need to comply with that. So one of the requirements of the organization is to understand the articles in GDPR, understand what is applicable in their context, what will be the role of this organization with respect to GDPR, and then select and apply those particular articles to their context. So whichever article is applicable to that organization need to be complied with. That's how an organization need to achieve compliance to GDPR. So to summarize, GDPR has two broad sections. First section is recitals, which gives you the context and guidance on why and how specific articles were devised or formulated under GDPR. Then you have the articles, which are the mandatory compliance requirements of GDPR, which contains 99 articles segregated into specific chapters. There are 11 chapters in that.